up with them. Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White. Sweet stories about love, magic, and happily ever afters. But here's what nobody told you. The original versions of these stories were not written for children. They were written to terrify adults, and when you hear what was actually in them, you'll never look at these fairy tales the same way again. Before Disney, before bedtime stories, before the colorful picture books, these tales existed in a much darker form. The Brothers Grimm, Charles Perrault, Hans Christian Andersen. We think of them as gentle storytellers, but their original manuscripts tell a completely different story. One full of violence, assault, mutilation, and death. Today we're going into the real origins of the fairy tales you thought you knew. Let's start with Sleeping Beauty. You know the story. A princess falls into a deep sleep. A prince finds her, kisses her. She wakes up. True love wins. Here's the original version from 1634, written by Italian author Giambattista Basile. The prince doesn't kiss her. He finds her unconscious body in the forest and assaults her while she's asleep. She wakes up not from a kiss, but from giving birth to twins, still in her sleep. The story doesn't treat this as a crime. It treats it as the beginning of a romance. This version was widely read across Europe for over 200 years before it was quietly rewritten into something more appropriate. Now Cinderella. In the Brothers Grimm version from 1812, the glass slipper scene goes very differently. The stepsisters want the prince badly, so their mother takes a knife and cuts off one daughter's toes so her foot fits the slipper, then cuts off the other daughter's heel. Each time, the prince almost rides away with the wrong girl. But birds, sent by Cinderella's dead mother, fly down and whisper, "Look at the blood, look at the blood." The prince looks, sees the shoe filling with blood, turns back, and at the end of the story, those same birds peck out both stepsisters' eyes at the wedding as punishment. That's the version parents read to their children in 19th century Germany. Little Red Riding Hood. The version you know ends with a huntsman saving her. Charles Perrault's original from 1697 has no huntsman. The wolf gets to grandmother's house, kills her, puts her flesh on a plate, and her blood in a bottle. When Little Red arrives, the wolf tells her to eat the food and drink from the bottle. She does. She eats her own grandmother without knowing it. Then she gets into bed, and there is no rescue, no huntsman, no happy ending. Perrault ends the story with a poem warning young girls about dangerous men. The wolf was never really about a wolf. The evil queen in Snow White wants Snow White's heart brought back to her in a box. Most people know that part. What most people don't know is what she wanted to do with it. In the original Grimm version, she wanted to eat it, boiled with salt, as proof that Snow White was dead. The huntsman brings back a boar's heart instead. The queen eats it believing it's Snow White's. And at the end of the story, after Snow White marries the prince, the evil queen is invited to the wedding, where she is forced to put on iron shoes that have been heated red hot in a fire, and she dances in them until she dies. That's the Grimm version of justice. Hans Christian Andersen's Little Mermaid from 1837. No happy ending, no singing, no Sebastian. The mermaid makes a deal to get human legs, but every step she takes feels like walking on broken glass and sharp knives. The pain is constant and unbearable. She gets her legs. She reaches the prince. He chooses another woman. Her sisters come to her with a knife. Kill the prince, they say. Let his blood touch your feet, and you'll become a mermaid again. She refuses. She turns into sea foam at sunrise, gone forever. Andersen wrote this story after being rejected by the man he loved. Some literary historians believe the prince in the story was based on a real person, and the mermaid was Andersen himself. So why were the originals so dark? Because they weren't escapism. They were warnings. In a world with no police, no hospitals, no social safety nets, stories were how communities passed down fear. Fear of strangers, fear of the forest, fear of what happens to girls who trust too easily or wander too far. Disney didn't create these stories. Disney survived them. The versions we grew up with are the sanitized copies of copies of copies, stripped of everything that once made them dangerous. And maybe that's fine. Maybe children don't need to know that Cinderella's stepsisters had their eyes pecked out. But now you know the stories that came before, and you can't unknow them. If you want more dark history that textbooks won't teach you, subscribe. New video every week.